giving you a proper greeting here, but great to see you and thanks for being with us.
Oh, you too, man. Yeah, people are teasing me because I took off the whole rest of the year from podcasts, but then you guys asked, I'm like,
Uh-oh.
yeah, you too, man. Yeah, people are teasing
Oh, we
me
got a
because
good echo going.
I took off the whole rest of the year. Yeah, what's going
That's
on
probably
there?
me.
I wasn't aware of that, Steve. Well, we're quite honored. Thanks for joining us today.
We are.
We had like a last minute cancellation.
Whose echo is that?
I wasn't aware of that, Steve. Well, we're quite honored. Sounds like Bear Lando.
We are. No, I resent you.
Whose echo is that?
Is that a Steve Falconer echo? Check. Yep. That's a echo across the pond.
Oh.
Well, that's the whole fun of going live is get these.
I'm muted right now.
Check. Go ahead and talk. Be unmuted, Steve. Let me just see before I hit record.
Okay. Now I'm talking unmuted. I'm muted right now. See,
it's coming from you. You must have a tab open somewhere. Check your tabs on your browser. You probably have YouTube open. Hey guys, good to see everybody in here. We're going to dive right into this. Soon as Steve figures out the echo. Such a pleasure to be with Steve again today. I believe this is the third time we've had Steve on AlphaCast. And we're going to go right into his wheelhouse. And actually, Bear Lando is one of the probably preeminent, I don't want to say experts because we don't use their language. Trust the experts. But I can't think of two more knowledgeable souls.
I know nothing.
Yes. To dive into this material today. How we doing, Steve? We're good? You're muted.
Yeah, I think I had the YouTube channel open. Sorry, that was the echo. Yeah, thanks for having me on, guys. This is going to be great. As I was just saying to you, I took the rest of the year off from podcasts, but I couldn't turn this one down. It's my favorite, and one of my favorite topics. So this is going to be great.
Awesome. Okay, I'm going to hit record.
It's an honor to have you here, and thank you for making time.
Thank you.
Here we go.
And you are always one of my favorite talks, so looking forward to it.
Thank you. Are we recording or not?
No, I had to stop because Bear spoke over.
All right.
Here we go.
You realize I'm going to just keep talking as soon as you press record, no matter how many times you do it over.
The hazing never ends in the AV locker room. Okay. Here we go. Wait, now I messed up. I don't want to record to the cloud. I want to record to my computer. I don't like recording to the cloud. And boom, we're back for another episode of AlphaCast. I'm Mike Winter, and I'm here as always with the captain of our ship here in Alfa Vedic, Dr. Bear Paul Lando, coming to you live and direct from the great state of Jefferson, where freedom reigns supreme. We're on day 5 of straight rain as the bomb cyclone was supposed to hit. We definitely had some weather, but nothing really out of the ordinary. But as I've said, Bear, over the last few years, we are going into a quieter time of the sun. I'm actually interested in maybe talk about a bit this today, because no matter what your point of view on the cosmos or the shape or function of the realm, I think it's obvious that there are rhythms to the sun, just like rhythms to our life and the seasons. And many would say we're going into a minimum phase, which means longer summers, longer winters, which is seems to be quite apparent with my observations over the last few years. And we're already getting record snowfall at Mount Bachelor. I saw yesterday, Bear. They're opened already, and they're known to go all the way through June. So we're looking at potentially 7-8 months of snowboarding this year. So there's always a benefit to the weather.
Frozen rain is a good deal, and you live closer to that than I am. I live right in the smack dab in the rainforest. We're just getting into winter, and all I can say is it sucks squash balls right now.
Yeah, it's no fun.
I'm ready to move back to Hawaii.
Oh man, I can't argue with you there. Yeah, always transmuting what could be annoying into the benefit. So at least there's no shortage of water on your end, Bear.
Things are green and lush. That's a Benny.
Yeah. Well, hey, we got Steve Falconer on today. We're going to dive directly into one of our favorite topics. Bear, Steve, and Amanda covered this topic on the end of COVID with the esoteric biochemistry episode. I think many have seen that, and we're going to now continue that conversation and go deeper and take it to whole other avenues of thought, as only we can do. As I was saying before we hit record, I don't know if I can think of two other gentlemen I'd rather talk to about this topic. Steve putting years and years of research into this, and of course, Bear applying this to his practice over the many decades. So I'm ready to get right into it. Bear, any updates or anything for our community before I introduce Steve?
Releasing a lot of new products, as you know. We're releasing our new Life Force protein line here Friday. One of the foundationals next week will be the free-form amino acid products, fermented amino acids. So it's going to set the whole protein market on its head because they're unique in all the industry, what we're putting out. And then we've been dropping our 0 Point Gold products. I think we're about 6 out of 12 or something now. But we'll get out the rest of those. And then we've got a lot of new teas in the waiting. I really want to get all this out before the holidays, but it just ain't happening. We've got the new tea line. We got an amazing topical salve line. And also, shortly into the new year, we're going to have an amazing merch line. I'm going to get together with one of my kids, Bryden, and your buddy, and he will oversee that. So look for some good stuff: hats, hoodies, T-shirts, you name it.
Yeah, I'd like to do.
Take it away, Mike.
I'd like to do the Germs Lives Matter shirt. But looking forward to that because Bryden always brings a good humor to the graphics in the past he's done. I'd love to bring some of that to the Alfa Vedic merch line. So yeah, and we sold out. Steve, you would actually dig the 0 Point Gold line because it's really modern day alchemy at its finest. And our the cleanse formulation dropped and sold out in a day. We apologize for that, guys, but I think we put more on the store. So you definitely want to go check that out. And
we were in the lab late at night trying to make it. We didn't anticipate so many orders, but it's it's a big drop. So just to segue into today, you take it away here, Mike. But last comment is those formulas emulate the technology that runs the entire realm. There's 4 pillars that we always talk about that are the foundation of how the etheric mechanisms work within the realm, within our bodies, and that's how they're made. Always, rather than just throwing a bunch of ingredients and seeing what sticks, we do it a much different way. So we can maybe illustrate that while we're talking about salt salts and stuff. So take it away.
Awesome. Yeah, check that out at alphavedic.com, and we will be dropping a gratitude sale for the Thanksgiving season here. So keep an eye out for that. And if you want to stay up to date, just join our mailing list. That's the best way. You can go to our website. There's a pop-up there or the bottom. Just join the mailing list, and that will inform you of all the new products and discounts and all that. Great. Well, we're back on with Steve today. Very excited to have Steve on. He's always a joy to talk to, and I've had the pleasure of hanging out with him in person, and he really is an awesome dude. And actually, Steve and I will be back together now in Acapulco in February. So I'm looking forward to that. We may even be roommates, Steve. We will see.
Ooh, sounds intimate.
Gay.
Gay.
Just get twin beds, please.
There is nothing more entertaining than seeing Steve come out of his abode every morning at Acapulco, like, what are we doing? Get me to the ocean. But yeah, good times. Well, author and filmmaker Steve Falconer joins this roundtable to further explore the etheric fabric that shapes nature, our bodies, and life in all dimensions. Central to our discussion will be the cell salts of life and how they connect us with the larger realm. And then I added this one. We'll also touch on the sacred Christos oil that emanates out of them as the divine, quote, milk and honey, or the spirit made flesh. Astrophysiology.
Available at your local pharmacy.
Astrophysiology allows a glimpse of the as above, so below principle in real time, while the alchemical sciences put it into a more functional light. So we'll use both to examine practical health solutions. Steve is a prolific political commentator. I didn't know. Well, I didn't really know that. But in the voice of Spacebusters on YouTube, BitChute, Odyssey, and Vigilante TV. He's also the author of the children's book, The Dukes of Dents, available on all Amazon platforms, and a former writer and administrator for Truth Serum News, where he wrote under the pen name Are You Sure? Steve is a former Chicago native living in Copenhagen, Denmark, a music teacher and a full-time touring musician. He's a father and researcher into all things hidden, a fantastic filmmaker. You can check him out over on YouTube at the Spacebusters channel. Berlando, take it away, my friend.
Great. Steve, thanks again for being here. Awesome. Always enjoy talking to you. And I know you made some special time for us here. So completely honored. Thank you. Always love talking to you. And I'm kind of torn. You know, I love to just sit back and listen to your brilliant mind go over the hidden gems throughout the centuries. You know, you're just a researcher extraordinaire. The first time you and I ever got together was with Amanda Vollmer doing that cell salts talk. So that was kind of fun. So I guess we're going a little bit back into cell salts again, but we can do whatever the hell we want, you know, if it seems to seamlessly flow into some of the other things that have been hidden from us in other ways, which I think it all connects. We can certainly do that. What I'd like to do today in our cell salts component of the discussion is maybe add a couple new variables. And the reason why I put this out is many people in our community will just legitimately ask questions about, well, will the cell salts help me deal with this problem, that problem, and which cell salt do you take for this condition? Cell salts are amazing, as we'll elaborate more as far as why. But there are other things involved as well. You know, the cell salts are let's just say, informational fields that come down through our heads from above. But then on the ground, there has to be some other things going on in order so the cells have the rest of what they need. Now they've got the instructions in the cell salts, but now you need some other things. So we'll talk more about that. And, you know, we can all add our own color commentary from that. So there's another aspect of this too. You know, we talk about these cell salts as emanations or resonant fields from the constellations, but where do the constellations get their juice from? And if you look at this whole realm as an electrical technology, then I believe the constellations using an electrical model should actually be thought of as the induction component in the, you know, in the whole affair there. But what comes first? So let's maybe dive into that a little bit too. And maybe a good way to start this off is, you know, you have such a broad background. How did you get into the cell salts in the first place? I know you have a great, you know, understanding of astro, you know, theology, physiology, and so forth. And I'm counting on you to really fill in a lot of those blanks from an astrological viewpoint. And then I'll add my 2 bits from a bio-trained physician standpoint and how things work on the ground. So maybe tell us how you got into cell salts in the first place, if that's a good place, or whatever you'd like.
Yeah, and thanks guys for having me on. I had time tonight, so it's really good. And I love that talk, Bear, at the end of COVID. That was my favorite one. Sadly, we were the last one. And I think it was one of the best talks, you know, but you had to sit through 100 other ones. I actually ran across this by accident years and years ago. I was watching, you know, I was just researching esoteric stuff, and Santos Bonacci just mentioned this book in a quick passing in a video, the Zodiac,
Right.
you know, George Carey and as Perry. And I was like, oh, what the hell is that? And he didn't really dwell on it. So you know, it's something I just bought the book, you know, and you don't know what's going on. Something told me to buy that book. And then I started reading it and I was like, oh my God, what is this? You know, because that
Pretty
book's got
trippy
just,
stuff, right?
yeah, because it's all about religion and mythology and, you know, physiology, histology, chemistry. Um, I had no idea all of this stuff was entwined. I was just learning syncretism. So it blew me away. And then I got into God, Man, the Word Made Flesh, and then the biochemic system of medicine. I just really started going deeper and deeper. I don't know why, because I actually hated like biology in high school and college. I couldn't stand it. um, but I used to work in the health insurance industry and the life insurance. So I did have like a little bit of a medical knowledge. So it was something I could kind of relate to. It was also practical. And also, I had allergies. I had like really bad hay fevers and allergies. I had some brown spots on my stomach after traveling. I don't know what they were, these little brown spots from my belly button down to my groin. And this dermatologist is the best one in Denmark said, "Oh, we don't know what they are. Here's some medicine. I can freeze some off if you want, and you can take this," but they come back. And I did my first master cleanse and then started these cell salts, and I no longer had allergies or those bumps, and they never came back. So I was like, there is something to this. And, you know, I started giving them to my son as well. He was a Taurus. He had a medical swelling in his cerebrum, which is Taurus, during a humid summer. And everyone thought he had a brain tumor and the family was freaking out, you know. And I went in this book and was like, oh, you're just missing this salt. And I started giving it to him like candy. And it went away. And sure enough, he didn't have cancer. Um, so I kind of just got in it with there. And then the reason I talk about it now, I was just on Lisa Sturbach's show. She's great. She might be in the chat, actually. I think Lisa's in the chat with Don Lester.
Yeah, she's
Um,
awesome. We love her.
she's so cool. Yeah.
Uh,
She just
she
wrote me
put
and
out
thanked
some
me.
great books and everything. We've got them in our reading list on the website. Everybody check her out for sure.
This is a great one on the cell salts.
Yeah,
This is hers as
good one.
well. Excellent book here. Um, but like she told me, she just wrote me and said, Steve, all these homeopaths and naturopaths are writing to me saying this is the first time they understand the zodiac connection after my talk. So clearly I'm doing something right. And as Amanda Vollmer and I talked about, doctors, even naturopaths and homeopaths don't know this stuff. And this is really important because, as we'll get into, when you're born, and this is not sidereal, today too, we're going to clear up the myth about that there should be 13 months and constellations and sidereal versus tropical astrology and the zodiac. There's a big confusion, and I can clear that up today. But
I
the
would
thing,
love to hear that.
yeah, it's really important, especially as we get into the Christos oil, because when the moon is in your tropical sign, and we'll call it frequency. We're not even going to call it Aries, Taurus, Gemini. We're going to replace those words today because it has nothing to do with those constellations. It has to do with a frequency and a 12 circle wave. Um, but when your doctors understand that when you are conceived and when you are born, your body runs out of these certain minerals faster because these minerals are coming down through the sun, the moon, the planets, and through your water and the air and interacting with these minerals. This is creating your health, your experience, your personality, your vibration. Um, and so certain people have certain illnesses. Now, what's great, Bear, like you said, you like to do practical. I've got some slides from Lieberpokel that I did where I show some of the main diseases that you'll get if you're missing these certain salts. So we could even go through those slides if you want to make this very useful and practical.
Yeah, if you're ready, go for it.
Yeah, we could do that. So yeah, but that's the main thing is people need to understand, like Bear said, we are interacting with the realm. We're not just little meat suits walking around here, you know. These salts are affecting every single part of your body. And the ancients have drawn our bodies in the sky, and then they named little constellations after it to tell a story so that they could pass this story down. So it's really important. People say, well, I don't need to learn the woo-woo part, the zodiac and all that. But once you understand this science, you really do, because it's really, really helpful. And there's very few people out there talking about these cell salts. Don't you agree?
You know, Steve, sorry, quick comment. You know, my favorite course in all my medical studies was embryology. And I really believe embryology is the key to everything. When you understand the unfolding of the human organism, you can also trace it through what you're about to talk about. You can also understand metamorphosis as explained by Goethe and Steiner. You can understand what the old alchemists were talking about. And now when you put all those parts together, then you have a fairly complete understanding. And then there's a couple other pieces of the puzzle we'll get to later.
Yeah, exactly. And when you see, graphics anyway, I don't know if anyone's ever filmed, I don't think it's been filmed real time, but they say that when the fetus is in the mother's amniotic fluid, the brain starts first, then the spinal cord, so the nervous system, which, as we'll get into, that's Aries, the ram or lamb of God. That's the number one sign, because that's the first thing that happens when a baby's made. The brain and the nervous system, the spinal cord and nervous system come, then everything starts growing off of that. So yeah, this is embryology. This is, as you said, Bear, last time, this is basic histology. Right. So basically what's happening is our body has natrium compounds, which is like makes up our fluids, calcium compounds, which is all our bones, phosphorus is our nerves and electrical system, and then ferrum, iron, is in the oxygen attraction and blood. And blood is very important. We could, Steve Young and I talked about this. George Carey thinks that the cell salts are the philosopher's stone, and that the blood is the rubedo or reddening that the great alchemists were looking after, the everlasting fluid, the ichor of the gods, or the cup of everlasting life. Yeah, that's your blood, because if you cut your wrist, you're dead. You know what I mean? So that's pretty fascinating. And then when we get into the Christos oil, when you raise the chrism, that opens up the pineal gland, which secretes our melatonin. Now, that's really important because melatonin rejuvenates red blood cells and it counteracts the aging process. So this is pretty crazy when you start looking how these salts and the Cristos work together. And then you're talking about, did these Bible people live to, they're allegories in my opinion, but why are they 1,200 years old and 600? As I said with Brandon.
So,
yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Just a little teaser here. Since you mentioned melatonin, if we want to look at the spaces that aren't spaces, it's etheric medium, but what we consider spaces, and we talk about dark matter, black holes. I'm going to just throw it out there that is actually a substance, and that substance is melatonin. And we're going to maybe dissect a little bit how that melatonin in the larger realm is duplicated in us so that we can do exactly what the realm does in order to self-perpetuate. So go ahead.
Wow, that's incredible. I've never heard that before. So that's why I'm on here. I come here to learn. And I think too, we should get into the serotonin and the pituitary gland and the dopamine and the thalamus, especially the dopamine, because they're attacking us with all these dopamine hits, with all this scrolling and social media reels. They're trying to give us dopamine overload, which really kills you. Like, you don't want to be.
I think there's a really important connection between the pineal and the pituitary, right? And that relates to male, female, gold, silver, the cave of Brahma, and that up and down process monthly of this Christos oil, and in terms of relating to our generative system and releasing our fluids. And this gets into Tantra. I think all this is connected. I would love to dive into all of this today, Steve.
Yeah, let's do that. Well, the Ida and Pingala, the land of milk.
Yeah.
Go, Bear.
You have to understand those two glands in the head are a dipole. And between that dipole is the third ventricle, which has cerebral spinal fluid, which carries that electrical spark between the two. and then, as you're going to explain, goes down to the next place in the zodiac, which is Taurus. But yeah, I always like to look at things through an electrical lens, and that's what we're looking at there. So yeah, it's got all these kind of significance on a cosmic and esoteric level, but it's a real functional electrical dipole that allows our whole body to be animated from top down.
Yeah, that's so important too, because these salts are electrical capacitors pretty much. And this is what's important. We're starting to learn now with Vita Austin and Emoto. We're starting to figure out that the water has memory. We are missing a huge. I don't think Dr. Carey and Perry knew anything about what we're learning about water right now. And salt water is electrical conductive, not regular water. So it makes sense that we have minerals in the fluids that make up our body, right? That are also talking and resonating with the sun, the moon, the five wandering planets, and maybe even the constellations. I'm on the fence about if the actual constellations are really that big of effectors. But for most certain, the sun, the moon, and the five wandering planets are. So yeah, we're electrical beings. We know it. You can go out and go do grounding and energize, and you can hug a tree, and we are electrical beings. And so it makes sense that we're made out of salt and water, minerals, not just salt,
Yeah.
but
And if
minerals.
I think you mentioned Bigelson early on, but with the work that they've done and going all the way back to Béchamp, we know about these protids, the microzyma, which are these little seed forms of life that do not ever go away. Like we know from what Béchamp found out looking at chalk, right? He was able to reanimate those forms. So there's got to be a connection here, right, between that organic life form, the salts, the cell salts or tissue salts, and the structured water. I mean, we're starting to see the magic of life unfold. We're really starting to come to a better understanding of how this directly relates with consciousness, don't you think?
I do, absolutely. Yeah. And today I think we're talking a little more about the biology or the physiology, but this is the connection to the consciousness. If you look at psychics and clairvoyants, people who have extreme clairvoyance, they've taken pictures of them with Kirlian photography, and their pineal gland has a green aura shooting out around it where mine wouldn't, because I like beer. I drink beer and wine. Um, and we'll get into that maybe. It's not really your pineal gland that is the connection to God. It's the aura or the electrical field or the whatever you want to call the next etheric level, or it's that. It's the energy field coming from the pineal gland, not the gland itself. And funny enough, green and white are interchangeable. So Walter Russell talks about the still white magnetic light of God. Well, green is white. It's weird. Our brain draws green. It doesn't really exist. That's maybe we don't want to go there, but I find that pretty fascinating that people,
It's
who are
another
clairvoyant,
it's
psychic, have
another
agreed.
great top yeah. It's another great topic that Goethe and Steiner got into, though, is color and what we're really seeing. So a good one, but please go ahead.
And quite interesting that that's the green chakra is sitting right dead in the middle of our toroidal field, like
Yeah.
right in the plane. So it's like, all right, is that an accident or what? Like, I don't think so. But let's do this real quick. Yeah, let me share my screen. Hold on. Oh frick, how do you do that? Share. Here we go. Share desktop. Yeah. So I'm just going to pull up my slides real quick from Anarchapulco. They used to be in order. I don't know what.
You cleaned up your desktop a bit.
Yeah. These aren't. I just wanted to show a couple of, read a few things. I'm not going to blow through all this.
You know what's funny is your desktop's just like my desktop, and we're both Virgos.
Yeah.
And like if you could see my office right now, like you talked about this a bit with Lisa actually on her podcast, but it's funny because like Virgos we're supposed to be this really analytical and organized, but it's not totally how we work, huh? Like our physical space can look chaotic, but we know with every part, with the function of every single misplaced supposedly item is actually for.
That's what's funny
That's
is we know where it's at. We get
Yeah.
pissed off when people move our stuff. They're like, I cleaned your stuff. You're like, where is it? I know it's there. I
so
just wanted to
both of you
show.
must have your moon in Saturn.
Oh yeah, I don't even know where mine's all over, but I just wanted to show people who don't know what we're talking about. I think all your people do. We just need to start thinking of our bodies more like this and less like what we see each other as. This is really what we look like. We are humans, HUE. We are color. We are just light frequencies condensed into different colors and into what we think of as physicality. But what I wanted to show real quick was some things that Dr. Carey and Perry said. Okay, here we go. This is the one here. This is from the Zodiac and the Salts of Salvation. They said that air, so now we're getting into alchemy again, right? We have the fire principle, the sun, and then the air, the male principle. The air is the raw material for our blood. And when it is drawn in or breathed in, rather, by the infinite alchemist, us, to the blood vessels, it unites with the philosopher's stone, the mineral cell salts that make up our tissues and blood and in the water. And the human laboratory creates blood. So then the blood is the elixir of life, or the ichor of the gods. The ichor of the gods, they allegedly had this sort of magic drink. This is kind of like the fountain of youth, the fountain of everlasting life. So this is the philosopher's stone is supposed to be red, and you're supposed to be turning lead into gold, which we will get into. Then he said here that the basis, so now we're talking about fibrin real quick, that the basis of all fibrin is kali myrrh, but as there are many different uses for it, the fibers are differentiated by the addition of other minerals or inorganic salts. When these salts are put together, combined with the protoplasm formed by the cerebrum or Aries, then they become organic, which merely means put together as bricks with mortar, which was really important. I used to have these in order. Maybe it's by name. Hold on. Yeah, they have to be by name. Here we go. Sorry. Oh, it's backwards. One more. Here we go. Yeah, here we go. So in the Middle Ages, this was all hidden by another one of my favorite topics. The Vatican hid all this shit from us. They used to know all this stuff. Carrie says angles of the planets cause effects or influences, which we're going to get into. That's what I'm going to talk about. There's no 13 signs and there's none of that stuff. It's the angles of these planets and suns in the realm throughout the year. Spring is always spring, right? I don't care what you call it, Aries or March 21st or whatever. It's not going to start snowing where I'm at on March 21st. That's not going to happen, right? These are energies that keep happening from the toroidal field. You have the divergence, boom, the explosion at the cardinal point, then it makes its way around, then comes back in, right? And that's through your fixed and mutable, and then boom and boom. So these are causing the effects. So the priesthood of the Middle Ages, wishing to control the ignorant masses, us, I would suggest it's still going on. They personified the influence of planetary aspects, positions, or angles, and they transposed the letters to spell angels. So this is what's going on. The church is really talking about these angles of these planets, the sun and moon, and the constellations, and how they are creating different energy patterns at different times of the day and year. So these angels or angles of the 12 zodiac sign materialize their vitalities inside of us, and through the operation of chemistry, which is our body is the divine chemist, creates the intelligent, I won't call them molecules, of divine substance that make the word flesh. I don't like the word molecules. The term angel, angle, or of the sun may be used for the position of the sun at birth, largely controls the vibration of blood. So this gets back to what we were talking about. When you're born, this is why astrology is so heavily based on your sun sign, because when you come out and first meet the sun face to face, this is it. This thing is controlling the vibration of your blood. It's setting the vibration of your resonance of your body. And depending on where you're born, it's going to resonate with the mineral of that month. So the sun and the moon and the planets, I'm going to show you guys later, they're doing this every single day and every month. There's different times where different vibrations and angles are hitting us. The brain,
It
now again, this is
fluctuates during the day as well, and also during the days of the week. So, yeah.
yeah, and like we were talking about how the sun, you know, I don't know if we were on camera. The sun is now white. When I was a kid, it was yellow, and there are stories it used to be red, and you know, and then the blue. So it does seem like there's maybe even much longer cycles than a year or two where this has another a mutation.
Well, and also, Steve, I think there's the point of our consciousness affecting it. It's a two-way street, you know? So there's a feedback loop going on there, I believe, and has to do with sort of the karmic destiny of humans here. And this can also relate to Steiner. I don't, Steiner keeps coming up today, but in his very brilliant notion about how human consciousness has evolved through these epochs, and maybe there's a specific sun color for each of those epochs.
That's quite interesting because Brashears at Archaics had that chief iron feather or whatever his name was. Did you see that when he had that Indian chief on?
Yeah, I didn't see the whole thing, but yeah, the guy was pretty cool.
He was totally cool. I love that he speaks like Ebonics too. What up?
Yeah, he's kind of hip hop.
It was totally cool. He's like the hip hop Indian chief. But you're right, Mike, because water and the brain are both, they're transmitters and receivers. So resonance goes two ways. It's not just one, right? Resonance is a two-way street. So if we're resonating with the realm, it makes sense that we interact with it the other way.
Yep.
Doesn't it? Does that sound crazy? Or is
Steiner explained how the constellations, if you look at them retrograde, it explains more the larger picture of evolution of the human species.
Yeah, and I think these suns, so because these suns and these minerals are affecting us, it could be that mankind has been stupid because we've been in the time of the yellow sun. Right. And now I don't know if the white sun white is the white still magnetic light. I don't know if we're having this awakening because we are now going into a white sun that's colder. Right. I do think we are going into the Eddie Grand Solar Minimum. It does seem like we are.
Or the flip side too, like that the consciousness evolution that is happening. That is, I think, in master cycles too, bigger cycles. That I don't know if Steiner really got into because he talks about the epochs, but I think those epochs potentially could be framed in larger cycles. But that being said, yeah, maybe it's a reflection, right? So, and that is because we are condensing that pure white light of creation through the etheric medium or through just the pure conduit of consciousness, then the sun is reflecting that as well. So yeah, it goes both ways. You're right.
I mean, you know, Carrie and Perry in that book that I showed, the Zodiac, in the chapter on Aquarius, Perry was very adamant that things are going to drastically change in Aquarius because of those exact frequencies you're talking about, and that we're going to start seeing colors like we've never seen before. She's also adamant that continents, islands are going to sink, other ones are going to rise up. Like, she's saying we're in for like a really big change, both physically and, you know, electro and electrochemically. She's really adamant that the age of Aquarius is when this happens. And there's a big section. But anyway, so they were saying the brain itself is a receiver operated on by the celestial influences or angles or angels, and they have to operate according to directing force or intelligence of its source power. Man has been, here's what you were saying, Mike, man has been deficient in understanding because his brain receiver did not vibrate to certain subtle influences. The dynamic cells in the gray matter of the nerves were not finely attuned and did not respond, hence sin or falling short of understanding. And that's what raising the Christos oil is all about, is opening these gray dormant brain cells in your right side. Remember in school, we were told if you only use 10% of your brain, right? And if you do some LSD, you use 13. And I'm like, well, maybe the ancients used 100% and had 1600 IQs. Then it's not so hard to figure out how they built the pyramids.
And this could also relate, Steve, to the whole priest class and the occulting and religion and the control mechanisms around that. Literally, and Steiner talks about this too, like how in that time when humanity was more of a tribal collective consciousness, you did have individuals who essentially ascertained this knowledge and were able to use this technology to rule and to take and keep everything occulted in the time of great occult, the great occulting of religion. And I do believe we are exiting that now.
He also elaborates greatly with those past civilizations and how they were more, let's just say, predominant on, we'll just call right, left brain, even though that's a misnomer, more into their, multi-dimensional thought processes, what we think of as right brain. And when that shifted, which isn't necessarily, definitely there's an agenda out there to make us stupid. But there are other larger reasons why we kind of shifted in the other direction. And then what we're the return of the Christ consciousness, we'll say, is when we integrate the two and there's no longer a perceived separation between the heart and the mind, which receive resonance in a different way.
I was just going to say that, not exactly that, but
I knew that. That's why I wanted to say it first.
Dude, man, quit taking all my gig, man. what I was gonna say about this page, they're just talking about the brain, your heart, and you can think with your gut and think with your heart, right? You can feel and think. It's not just your brain. Your whole body's made of water receiving these and the cell salts. So this is not just the brain. This is the whole body, the heart, the gut. And we'll get into those nerve centers that are down there, like the solar plexus and Virgo, the branch.
And
go ahead.
The heart, what might make the sorry, I'm really interrupting you a lot. I'll shut up.
I love it. Yeah, I want to talk. I don't want to just give a lecture, so let's talk.
Okay. What makes the heart our real thinking organ is you go back to embryology. The heart does not form as an organ. It forms in response to the energy flow, which the energy flow then becomes the flow of the direction of cells that are newly forming embryologically. And then the vortex architecture of the heart is then a response to that. So if you look at those flows, which are the patterns of natural design, and the heart is in fact a replication of that energy flow, then it might be able to receive some kind of cool information.
Yeah, and we know the heart is not a pump. That's all been debunked, right? It's a big toroidal field magnet. It's got a dielectric plane. It's got a plane of inertia. It's sucking and it's not pumping anything. It's a toroidal field that's moving everything around, and the iron in your blood is attracted to the magnetism. So this one, he says, this is the last one I want to read from these because these are boring to read, but I'm trying to help people understand what are these cell salts? How do they work? So when we know that a deficiency in the cell salts of the blood causes the symptoms that medical ignorance has dignified and personified with the names that nobody knows the meaning of, like when you tell your doctor, you've got a rash, and then they give you they give you the Latin term for rash and then charge you $500. Oh, you've got, what do you call it? Eczema. And you're like, what the fuck's eczema? And they're like, it's a red rash. And you're like, I told you I had a red rash. That's why I came here.
Isn't it amazing though? It was just astounding to me how when I was seeing patients regularly, they'd come with their little label from, a different kind of doctor, and they loved it because it gave them a security of like, oh, at least I know what I have now. And I used to say, yeah, you got a word.
Yeah, you knew what you had when you came in. You're like, my elbow hurts. You're like, you've got a hurty elbow. You want to know why. You don't want to know what you have, right? You're like, what caused it? So she's saying, one, we know how to heal scientifically by the unalterable law of the chemistry of life. When we learn the cause of disease, then and not before will we prevent disease. Not through quarantine. This is really important. What did we just go through in 2020? Nor disinfectants, nor boards of health. Sorry, Kennedy, I know you're getting elected through Trump, but will man reach the long sought off plane of health? Not through affirmations of health, nor denials of disease, or will bodily regeneration be brought? Not by dieting or fasting or Fletcherizing or suggesting will the elixir of life and the philosopher's stone be found. So I don't know if we don't really want to do the Zodiac too. I'll just do this super quick. I won't go around it all. People can see this later. I just want to show people, and don't think of these as Aries, Taurus, Gemini, Cancer. Forget about that. Let's call these frequencies like on a piano, like a note, right? Let's call Aries A, and let's call Taurus A sharp or B flat. So that on a piano, that's the white note in the middle of the three black ones. That's the last black note. And let's call this one B, and we'll call that C. Cancer is C, A is Aries, C sharp, D, E, F, F sharp, G, G sharp, and back to A. I missed one somewhere in there, right? So think of these as frequencies, not forget the name Aries. This is where everyone's getting confused. This has nothing to do with the constellations. They were added later. So this is just an archetypal map for the 12 major energies that happen throughout the year because of the sun and then the moon and the day as well. But as you can see, they drew the constellations later around this map. Now here's where people go, oh, we're missing one because a circle has 360 degrees. And so every one of these 12 signs is 30 degrees. But people say, well, what the hell? The constellation Taurus goes through like 2/3 of the sky. And then this one's really tiny. Virgo's small, right? So yeah, these constellations aren't 30 degrees of the entire sky. This is just a map. It has nothing to do with the name. It would be really less confusing if they didn't call them this. But they have these names because they have to do with the energies of the year and in the body. So spring is called Aries because the ram leads with its head. It comes out with a charge, boom, right? And that's also the head in our thing. But so you can see they've drawn our body around these 12 signs, which all correspond to a mineral. And then they all correspond to either, like Bear was saying, either the natriums, calciums, phosphate, phosphorus, or the iron. So they're fluids, structural stuff, or tissues or nerves. Basically, that's it. And we won't go around all this, but when you're born, what I did want to show is
well, can I just say, Steve,
yeah, go ahead.
There is something pretty powerful about relating this to tones instead of degrees. This idea of a 12-tone system, right? Because like in music, the 12-tone technique was pretty revolutionary in Western classical music. And the thing that was interesting about it is it abandoned traditional tonality and it emphasized equal importance among all 12 notes. Yeah, you're onto something here.
Well, and it's crazy. I never thought of this because I've been having trouble explaining this to people, like coming up with a metaphor. I don't know her name, but people should go over to a Rumble and sign up to Law of the Luminaries and then go on to Telegram and the Keystone. There's a Telegram channel, the Keystone. I don't know the girl's name, but she is doing some monster syncretism work. And so I've even pulled some screenshots that I'll show today off of her to help explain. But yeah, everything is frequencies. So there's like a symphony going on in the sky because of the sun, the moon, the planets, and maybe probably the constellations. And those frequencies are resonating with us because of the water and the air and the cell salts and other things too. And that's what's happening. I just wanted to show this real quick. Then I think what we'll do is, because we covered this before, like I don't know if you want to get deep in this, but what happens is here's a person on the left. They're conceived. Your parents had sex, like your dad knocked your mom up right there on March 21st, right? So you're in your mother's womb for these 9 months while the sun is like carried, like I just read, the sun through the air and the blood and the vibration in the water is starting the minerals, they're synthesizing the the resonance and the spins of these minerals, right, in your fields. There are these 3 months you weren't in your mother's womb. Now, this is what I think we speculated last time. I think this is the fall of man.
Mhm.
Why is it we need to synthesize 12 minerals, but we're only in the womb for 9 months? Isn't that weird? You'd think as a God doesn't make mistakes, right? So shouldn't we like be perfected beings? Or is this to give you a trial and tribulation? You see what I mean? Like,
Yeah, could be part of
so
the schooling, to provide the stimulation. You're like, if you're not perfect, so that you have some, yeah, like you said, trial and tribulation. And once again, Steiner talks about how in that first epoch of your human design, you are all the fluids and tissues you're directly sharing with your mother. Right. So that is interesting that those 9 months you are basically, having that interaction with the mother, with your own creator. And then those 3 months when you're out on your own, you are severely lacking those important months of development from them.
That's
Yeah.
that's an interesting concept, Steve, because there are some ancient teachings, well corroborated in a lot of places, and they claim that man's first advent within this realm was not through the birth canal, and that we were incarnated in an adult perfect form. So we didn't go through that 9 months gestation in the first place. And that only happened, coming in as a helpless infant after, you call it what you want, the fall of man, whatever. I think that's another whole good discussion. So maybe part of this 3 month blackout is just the karmic wheel happening. But then again, you're going to explain how we can compensate for that with soul salts, right?
yeah, well, we have the cheat codes now, but yeah, I've heard stuff like that too. And I've heard like
Mm-hmm.
that the original first man, like Adam Kadmon, was a hermaphrodite. Like we didn't really, we were almost I don't even know what you call it, not bisexual, but like two sexes and one hermaphrodites, I guess.
Well, that's,
Anyway,
yeah, like that
yeah.
in Thinking in Destiny, Percival talks about that is the fall, and that the great test was to be able to see feeling being feminine and desire being male, if we could separate and then not engage in just pure sexual engagement, but it could master that and then reconnect back to our true sexless body. And then the fall is when we fail in that test and go into lust and avarice and desire. Let either desire take complete control or the feelings take complete control and not be in balance. So yeah, there's definitely something to this. And of course, they talk about the pain of birth, and there's people actually teaching like how birth can be pleasurable and we can transcend that. But obviously, I've always wondered, like, why is birth so gnarly? Like. There's something.
I
Yeah,
didn't
man.
feel
Homer said you
anything
can
when I was born.
orgasm. Say again, Bear.
I said I didn't feel anything when I was born.
Mine was fine. I don't know. I don't know how my mom went down, but why this is important though, right? So if you know when you were born, if your doctor, you came in and just the secretary just gave your doctor your birth chart, your birthday, and he knew all this or she knew all this, they would already know what problems you're probably going to have, because you're going to be having the problem from your sign and the problem for the next two signs after your month, because you weren't in the womb for any of this. These are the salts you run out of the most. We won't get into all the food. These are in our food and you can make them. And I think Bear has a laser beam or something, a green. Don't you have a laser that makes these things in water?
Yeah,
But what I,
let's find it.
Beam me
yeah,
up, Bear.
can you get
Beam
it?
me
That's
up.
totally cool, man. While Bear's getting that, I want to show people it gets worse. It
Just
gets
when you
worse.
thought it was okay, it gets
The,
worse.
the frogs are all gay too. Yeah. So,
You got the papers.
so here's a person who's born in the middle of the month, right? Mid cusp. So they didn't fully receive this energy. They were conceived here. I'm sorry, on the left. They didn't fully receive the sun's vibratory patterns in the blood here either. So now they're missing the 9 signs plus that one. Or they've gone through the 9 signs here. Now they're missing 6. They're missing the 3 they would have missed if they were born cusp. And now they're missing these other ones on the halves. See how this gets? So these kind of people can be really sick. This happened to my son. Like he was really sick when he was just constantly sick. Um, so again, if your doctors knew how this worked, they would already kind of know what kind of ailments you're probably going to have, because each of these signs correspond with a cell salt, which correspond with a part of the body or a system of the body. Just for example, I'll just read um, yeah, I'll just read like Pisces here, for example, on the left here where the red arrow is. That's your feet, arterial blood, your red corpuscles in your blood, and that salt is ferrum phosphate, which we call iron, which is why your blood is magnetic. This is not iron shavings, by the way. This is something else. So your doctors would already know to start giving you these things. And then I think, how about, do you guys want to blow through real quick, like what signs might suffer what diseases? So this is like practical to people.
I think people like that a
Sure.
lot. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Let's do that. So here's common disease symptoms expressing due to the lack of or healed by use of each zodiac sign's mineral salt. Often they're in combinations with 1 to 3 other ones too, depending on, because your body, like we said, is an electrical circuit. Just like any electrical circuit, certain parts are connected to other parts. This is, I guess, like, isn't it, are you getting into like Chinese medicine and all this, what's the shit, where they press on the bottom of your feet and all that stuff? What do you call that? What's that called? I guess this would be like,
Reflexology.
yeah, reflexology and all that. Let me see. I'm in my own way.
What's absolutely amazing to me is, we use a lot of neurological techniques in my practice, and people would come in with orthopedic issues, all sorts of things, and then you'd do some troubleshooting. It's all in the diagnosis, and then you go to different, like you say, reflex points or associated neurological points or meridian points, and you just do some simple little things, and all of a sudden some miracles would happen, which of course aren't miracles. And people were always just astounded. And then I'd remind them that, well, did you ever see the fuse box in your house where, you go flick this little switch and then the lights go on in the basement? I mean, we really, really give our toaster ovens a lot more credit than we do the human body. And why we've been so stupefied to think that there's some kind of intelligent design behind it. It's incredible. So that's how deep the brainwashing goes. Unfortunately, the doctors are the most brainwashed, but go ahead.
Yeah, and like what's weird is when you look at the zodiac with the fixed signs drawn in crosses, and then the cardinal signs, and then the mutables, they start connecting at 90 and 180 degree angles to other parts of the body that correspond, just like you're talking about. You could even draw acupuncture and points and meridians in this wheel. This science is so cool. So a person, if this is an Aries born person, there's like hundreds of these things. Lisa's book is really good for these, by the way. But you'd be missing this. Now, this is not just for Aries people, right? Because someone who was born Taurus or Gemini the 2 months afterward, they wouldn't have been in the womb here either. So this could also happen to people born Taurus and Gemini. But if you were missing potassium phosphate, then you could, these are some of like the really bad symptoms. It's extreme nervousness, insanity, which, we're all pretty crazy right now. So I would suggest we have some mineral deficiencies going on in our food. Paralysis, hysteria, because again, this is your brain. Aries is your brain and your nervous system and electrical system. And your phosphates are your nerve compounds. Like we talked about, natrium are fluids, calcium are structural and tissue, and phosphorus are your nerves. Hysteria, softening of the brain and spinal cord, nervous headaches, mental, physical exhaustion, fainting, strange forebodings, or getting hungry after eating. So again, like your stomach is connected too. So Taurus people, and this would also be Geminis and Cancers might suffer these. That's sulfate of sodium, which is called natrium sulf. So natrium is a fluid compound. Diabetes, asthma, gout, drowsiness, bitter metallic taste in your mouth, spinal meningitis, enlarged liver, headache on top of the head, suicidal tendencies. Great band, Mike. Did you get into all those guys back then, or Bear?
Of course.
I'm not
Oh, yeah.
crazy. Institutions are the one that's crazy.
All I wanted was a Pepsi, Mom.
And you wouldn't give it to me. A great band. Bilelessness, vomiting of bile, dirty tongue. So people have like a kind of a green or gray tongue, anxious dreams and nightmares. Um, so then we have the Geminis, which would also apply to Cancers and Leos. Bear's a Leo, right?
Yes.
Bear
are
is
Leo.
like you're basically a Lurgo. I mean, he is the last day of Leo, technically, right? You're like right on the Leo Virgo edge.
I'm told I always consider myself a Virgo because I never really got into astrology. And then I had a famous astrologer as a client, and she insisted on doing my chart and told me that no, everything's in Leo. So, okay, whatever.
You know
And,
what?
and here's
After
just,
yeah, go ahead.
go ahead.
No, you go ahead, finish.
I was just gonna, I was just gonna say that when we're talking about sun signs and predispositions and things, we also want to really avoid any kind of deterministic notions because the human spirit, we'll say, is our job is to rise above all these influences and control them, not the other way around.
Yeah, the placebo and nocebo. Yeah, you don't want to give yourself these diseases because you think
Yeah.
you're predisposed to them. What I'm saying is, if you have these symptoms or diseases, this is what you might want to take. This is probably why. So Gemini is chloride of potassium, calimur. This is mumps and measles. They are not childhood. I don't know. Well, we're on YouTube, so I don't know. We got to say this differently. It's not from flying invisible boogeymen. Smallpox, acne, boils, eczema, typhoid, typhus fever, syphilis, gonorrhea. Their STDs, guys, are germ theory BS too. They are not, you don't catch this stuff off somebody. I wish I
And
knew that when
just
I was young.
just a cliff notes for these things. You mentioned a whole bunch of things, smallpox and so forth, which are suppurative, kind of afflictions. And what we're really talking about, and this is going to simplify too much, but just to illustrate, let's just say you're short on calimure, which is that one that takes albumins and things from your organic foodstuffs and then forms them into fibrin of all types. And if that calimure is insufficient, then you can have an accumulation of those substances where they don't belong. And then, you're going to have those symptoms. And let's just say you're a Virgo and you're short of Kali sulf on top of it, which is, really responsible for a lot of things with lipid metabolism, but also it interplays with keeping the pores of the skin open, which are our largest elimination organ. So you guys that are Virgos, especially if you're short of that, then you're not going to outgas all the toxins and things because of the insufficiency of, what we're talking about. And you're going to have a buildup in the toxicity.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and then we won't get into that today. I've done this before. Virgo 90 degrees with Gemini, which is the tissue. These are the fibers, and Virgo is the oils of the body, the bowels, solar plexus, and the oils. This is the story of Athena and Arachne, right? Athena gets jealous, or Minerva. Athena's other name is Minerva, and she gets jealous because Arachne weaves all the beautiful tapestries. So Athena or Minerva turns Arachne into a spider, right? Or this is the story of Medusa. She gets turned to stone, and now she turns people to stone. This is the story of when you're deficient on the Virgo oils, you get these fibrin disturbances. There's also Mary and Joseph, the builder, the carpenter. Jesus, Mary, and Joseph, Pisces, and Mary, Virgo, are not 180 across the wheel and 90 degrees south. Sure enough, is Gemini, the builder. That's all your fibrins, your connective tissues and fibrins, bronchial tubes, shoulders and hands. Gemini is the twins, the two lungs, the two hands, two shoulders. So yeah, This goes all of our mythology, all of our religions. These stories are encoded in this science. But I think it's cool, Bear, that you can bring this down just to some normal. Also, like, when do children get these? They go to chicken pox parties and stuff. They're all at an age where they're having a growth spurt, right? So they've got these young, dying childhood fibrins that need to be removed to make room for new, longer, adult strength fibers. So it makes sense that they have these red bump diseases. That's got to come out somehow,
Well, and
right?
I think there is a relationship between the consciousness, you know, and this might come down to the oil later in the blood, but there's no doubt that these parties happen and that there's a presentation of the similar symptoms across the individuals there. And so immediately germ theorists will make a claim that that's due to a microbe, but there's something else going on in terms of how consciousness interacts with these salts, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you're getting into German new medicine, like they've been put in school and have the separation conflict. But my beef with German new medicine is that doesn't happen to all the kids. They all get separated, but they don't all start freaking out and having red bumps and stuff, and they all don't get mental problems. So to me,
German New Medicine is a brilliant schematic that ties together the psyche, neurology, and embryology, and then also throws pleomorphic microbiology into the mix, even though Homer wasn't talking about, pleomorphism. The big takeaway, though, is that there's a lot of gaps in New German medicine. Now, that didn't prevent New German medicine from being very useful in my practice, but I also understood, the shortcomings and other elements that would actually not only explain New German medicine better, but also make it more effective, because I knew a lot of New German practitioners. In fact, the two ladies that taught me, who were ordained by Hammer to teach it, great, brilliant. But their batting average wasn't as good as a old-fashioned Bautrain physician either.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying too. I can show my wheel afterward. Yeah, let's cover that again when we finish this, because that's such a great point. I just went to the slide because it was up long enough to read. So cancer. Now this is funny. I was teasing Alex Zach at Liverpool. He's a cancer. 65% of cancer people are born weaklings. But this doesn't always. So I made Zach stand up because he's huge. Alex Zach's like massive, like he's a beast. So I made him stand up and was kind of joking. My point for doing that was to say, like you were saying, Bear, just because you're born in a sign doesn't mean you're going to have these deficiencies. It just means that you might, right? And if you do, just like, yeah, I'll get into the wheel. I'm not saying this is medicine, the only medicine, and acupuncture's not, and it's not energy, and it's not German new medicine. I'm saying you have to look at medicine holistically, and this is one of the most important parts. As Bear said in our talk with Amanda and Dawn Lester, these are the bricks. Like, all the builders can turn up to work, but you can't build the house if they don't drop the bricks off. And that's what these are. Like, if you don't have these, you're going to die. So the deficiency in this is mental disease, uneasiness, varicose veins, elastic fibers. And again, because this is cancer, so these salts are your breast, stomach, spleen, and your elastic tissues. These are the tissues that help you bend and move around, not your firm ones. A groundless
dental enamel.
Yeah, groundless fear of financial ruin. That's a crazy one. Cataracts, dim eye lenses, blindness, born a physical weakling. Alex Zach in the house. Malnourishment, or you don't digest, assimilate food well. I'll show a slide on that one. Let me show you that real quick. I just want to show people that because this is a fun story. So this dude here, King George the fifth, he had a problem with the cancer. He was Capricorn, and cancer, he couldn't digest food anymore. He was so sick. They were bringing all the physicians around from the realm trying everything. He could eat food, but he couldn't even digest food. His digestion system was just shut down. So they brought this dude, Dr. Dodds, from the London College of Medicine or whatever, and he put him on these salts because you take the cell salts, they're triturated, so they dissolve right into your mucous membrane. They bypass digestion and they go right into your bloodstream. And then the body is so smart, it knows where to bring them, what tissues or cells, if you want to call them cells. Um, so this guy got better in like a month of just taking these cell salts. He was able to then eat and then get nutrients from the food. And if people want to screenshot this real quick, this is a list. Like I said, you can get this in your food, but the way they farm now, they strip all the minerals out. They don't let the crops where all the minerals are, the plants and the stems, they don't let it drop to the earth there anymore, like one straw revolution farming. They till it all up, they bring it to a barn, and then they put all kinds of pesticides, but the dying bugs under the soil are bringing minerals up into these plants. So you don't want to kill all the bugs and animals because sorry, the vegans don't like this. You will eat the bugs.
But then Steve, they fortify it all with minerals.
Yeah.
It's like added iron. We're gonna shave some iron into your cereal.
Yeah, like exactly. And that I tell people that like ferrum phos is not iron. It's not like, the barbell at the gym. It's a mineral. It's not iron because people are like, why take iron? I'm like, yeah, they're putting metal shavings in your cereal. Have you seen that with the magnets and shit? Disgusting.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
so
as Carrie
Go ahead.
explains, it has to be able to get through the membranes, the fine membranes, to get into your bloodstream, and so it needs to be titrated at a specific level. And we'll probably get into that a bit.
If you guys want to, after, yeah, we can talk about the 6 times, 12 times, 30 times. It's interesting because there are 3 of these salts that need at least 12.
Well, that was
because
my
of the water
question
membrane.
too, Steve, because we talk about the importance of balancing the physical with the spiritual, and that in order to be truly healthy, you have to have that polarity and balance. But with homeopathy, traditional homeopathy, there's no physical in the actual remedy, right? It's just the pure energy. But from what I understand with tissue salts is you are getting actual physical micro nano particles of the actual inorganic material still in the pellet.
You can't get rid of it entirely. And just a quick comment to follow yours up, Steve. In practice, 6x is kind of a good general rule of thumb that'll cover most people's bases. However, when I administered cell salts, I tested not just for the remedy, but also for the potency. So it's hard to make a, across the board thing like they always have to be whatever. But, this chart here, yeah, it's a good rule of thumb. All I'm saying, if you see a few hundred people in a row and test everybody, it probably not going to work out that way.
Yeah. This is just the theory. And I talked to, I talked to both Amanda and Lisa Sturbach about this. So just so people know, basically, like, you're diluting this into parts per million, 1 part per million, I think it is, or whatever it is. Like, you take a plant and you're trying to get this mineral out of it. So you keep, doing this process and over and over and over until so if it's a 6 times, it means there's still plant material in there. And if it's a 12 times, there's a little trace, like less and less. And if it's 30 times, there's like barely fuck all left in there. You've just got the energetic essence of the plant. What I think is going on. Yeah, go ahead.
I would jump in and say you could go up to the LM potency, which is like so far beyond 6x or 12x. You're still going to have stuff in there. And an additional comment, you can take a traditional homeopathic remedy, name any, belladonna. And because it's put through the same process, well, that plant has minerals in it. It has cell salts in it. And Dr. Carey would argue that the real reason why homeopathy works is not because of the law of similars, but because there are, in fact, remnants of cell salts in there. And he gives illustrations as far as why, quinone from the bark of a tree, might prove useful for something we call malaria, even though it's not a germ etiology, but why it actually works. And it's because of the cell salts in that, particular botanical species. So
yeah, malaria
just
is a
another thought.
Taurus natrium salt deficiency. Yeah, exactly. So again, like that's why I like to talk to you guys, because you have more of a practical hands-on with this. The only thing this says is, now Amanda told me that. So the other thing I'm saying is, it's not the plant that's healing you, even in homeopathy or these cell salts. It's not the little bit of plant that's left in 6 times. It's reducing the spiritual, energetic essence of that plant into a salt. So, we're this isn't just a physical science we're talking about. These little pills are little energy bombs, and they have the essence of wherever they got them in there, which is, to me, you can do Eileen McCusack, who's awesome. You can do her tuning forks and tune your bioresonant field, which will tune your body salts, or you can tune the salts, which will tune the field. Like you said, Mike, it's a two-way street, right?
Yeah, and I think it comes down to the science of tones and really the music of the spheres in the universe. As I'm looking at the Russell periodic chart of elements on my wall here as poster form, and looking at potassium, calcium, these things, and they're all just essentially different resonating, just different points of resonance, right? As we talk about, they shift and transmute down the line, or really through the spiral. So this is all just relating in the end to for me, the resonating form of consciousness as it comes into matter. And then that relates to each individual personality, depending upon when. I think there's a greater reason too of why we are conceived, when our parents have contracted with us to choose to conceive us. And that relates to, and we talked about this in human design, and we talk about this with the pure sort of causal destinies of our previous lives. So yeah, it's all like this really holistic, beautiful science that's we're really starting to figure out finally.
Yeah, I like to explain it. Here's my normie way of explaining this shit, right? When you're driving in your car and you're listening to the radio and you tune to 93.7 FM, the view, whatever it is, that's resonance. There's a crystal tuner in your radio that's vibrating to the same frequency that 93.7 FM is broadcasting at. So your car radio picks up that frequency. That doesn't mean the other 700 channels aren't flying through your car at the same time. It's just your radio's tuned to one. So you could think of these salts or resonance through the water in your body as little radio tuners, right? So the more you are tuned, the more these tune your body, the more frequencies you pick up, because all is really mind precipitating into light or sound. And light, to me, sound is just slowed down light. Although I actually saw some guys who say sound is faster, actually. Have you seen that?
Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, it's all about the perturbation of the etheric field and all that. But yeah, I love the radio analogy because it's like you come in as a country music lover, maybe you like alt rock, maybe you're hip hop, and that's your preference, but you can occasionally tune the channel and listen to some 80s or some old timey stuff, So and each of those has its own qualitative aspects to it, right? Which will lead to symptoms. If you're into punk rock, you're going to get hurt in the mosh pit. If you're in a country, you might get kicked off the horse a few times. So
or you'll just get stoned and drunk all the time listening to Willie Nelson.
There you go. I know,
roll me up and smoke me when I'm gone. But yeah, that's a good point, Mike. So like that's what these astrology birth signs are too. Your Virgo's a little bit country maybe, and Scorpio's a little bit rock and roll or punk. You could think of it analogously. Oh, that's not a word. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. That's a good analogy. So here's Leo. These are folks like Bear. This one's been up for a while, so I'll just go to the next one because people have probably been reading it out of boredom. Hold on a second. So then we got Virgo, which is your bowels and your oils and your solar
So is
plexus.
this why my lockjaw keeps acting up?
Probably, or you just fucking talk too much.
Well, I will say on the Virgo tip, on the Virgo tip, I've had a lot of issues in the past with eczema and like dry skin. I've always had really dry skin, and also had a lot of issues with digestive stuff and stuff around that. And since I've been hitting my cell salts every day and my bridge salts, man, my skin is so much better. I will say I used to get like a lot of like really white nails, and my cuticles were always gnarly on my hands growing up, and I could never figure it out until I hit the cell salts.
Do you know why? That's because we square 90 degrees with Gemini again. That's what I'm saying. Gemini is those tissues and fibers in the skin. That's why it's happening, because that's what I'm saying. These aren't just you. These square like 90 degrees and 180 across. So yeah, Qatar, conjunctiva, era. Here's Virgos. So I'm like Bear. I think I'm a day away from Bear. I'm August 23rd. So I'm actually the first day of Virgo.
Oh, interesting, because Bear is August 23rd, I thought. I'm August 24th.
Second.
So yeah.
Bear's 22nd. Yeah, so he's the day before.
Yeah.
Are we
22nd,
23rd? Yeah. That's fucking crazy that we're all 3 days apart from each other. That must be
kind of interesting, huh?
Yeah.
You gotta start a band,
Steve,
bro.
Yeah.
We should. Steve, can you see this that I'm holding up?
Yeah. Is that your laser thing there? Or the white thing?
The laser thing is, I got that in there too. The laser thing is this right here.
Do you want me to, I'll stop screen sharing for a second. Then you'll come up big.
Yeah, here's the laser. I'd shine it for you, but I got to go get some new batteries for it.
Yeah.
So this here, I just showed this because you're talking about car radios. Well, if you look at the old analog car radios before things went digital, you had a dual impedance antenna. So if you took the little faceplate off your Blaupunk in your car there, you'd see this exact thing. So this was designed by an Austrian physicist to measure things for the field of engineering. It's been adapted to medicine to measure idiosyncrasies in the torus field. And so when you go ahead and move the little slider, no different than a radio in a car, it's going to create different angulations, and then you're going to get different dowsing responses, depending where this is set and depending what it's pinging off of in the body. So yeah, it's all about exactly what you're talking. And there's actually instruments that are quite useful for doing what you're talking about. Another way, just real quick to categorize things, and I'll just use one example. You can take hydration, for instance. Let's use that. And a lot of folks are aware now that salt is good. Maybe add a little pinch in your water, and it helps, get hydration into the cells and everything. Well, if you go into the cell salts, you've got nat sulf, so natrium as sodium. You've got three, and it works like this across the board with, they're in groups of phosphorus. And so the natrium are all about normalizing water. Nat sulf is about eliminating water where you don't need it. So if you are short nat, you might be edematous or have a buildup of certain kinds of toxins and things, because the water is not eliminating. Then the next one you would have is nat phos, natrium phosphoricum. So you're still in the sodium, but what that does is it creates a balance. That's why Libra, the whole metaphor of the guy there, the woman with the scales of justice, It's about balance. It's about balancing the pH of the fluids. And then the final natrium is nat mur, which has to do, what's that?
Ankles, that's Aquarius, yeah.
Aquarius,
Ankles,
that's going to just
saline of the
have
blood.
to do,
saline, yeah.
Yeah, that's just going to do with fluid distribution, on a more of a macro scale. So when you just start getting an understanding of physiologically what these things do, and then you see the groupings, and then it makes it a lot easier to remember just for the regular folks there.
Yeah, this is interesting too. I think Lisa and I talked about this. So the Taurus one, that's the natrium sulf, right? This is what malaria is. If you are deficient in this salt and it's really humid out, you can't discharge all the water from the humidity that you're breathing in out of your blood fast enough, and you start fevering, especially if you have an iron, a ferrum deficiency, Pisces. Mm-hmm. So this is what happened to my son. And a lot of Taurus people don't like humidity. They want to live in colder places because they're Taurus and they're short on this salt. And so they get really like almost, confined or restricted. This had happened to my son. Now, I wish they had done a study. 25 guys went into the jungle and 5 got malaria. You hear those stories about the expedition. I would bet your ass those 5 guys were Taurus or, born 2 before that and were missing, or 2 after that and missing Taurus.
Yeah, be fun to see
Because,
that.
right? Because it's like, well, how come the same mosquitoes didn't like bite all 30 of you guys, and it's the same with the
Exactly.
Virgos. Um,
And the ferrum, of course, is about carrying oxygen. And if you're short of it, then the body's going to speed up the pulse, as Carrie, explains it like, well, you got 5 guys trying to do the work of 10 guys. So you got to speed up the work. And then you have a fast, thready pulse just to get oxygen to the tissues. And then you're going to go through some muscular convulsions, which is going to shake the water, with muscular contractions through the pores. You get the sweats, and they say, "Oh, you broke a fever." And then people with malaria supposedly, feel better, after they break the fever. They're just getting rid of some of that moisture that they aren't used to in that kind of environment. So it all makes kind of logical sense. We're simplifying, but it really does work that way.
Yeah, and that's when you get the chills. You're literally squeezing water out of your tissue and blood, like for reals.
Yeah, and
So,
there's
and
a reason why you get more of a tendency to have a higher fever in the afternoon versus the morning. We won't go into all that, but it has to do with the same principles.
yeah, exactly. And in the old days, if you had malaria, they would take you up to these high mountain resorts, they call health sanatoriums or whatever, where there was no
Right.
humidity up there. And these people would just get better in like a week. So you're like, well, if this is a bug that you caught from a mosquito or whatever out in the swamp, how come it didn't come with you up there? And it's because it's not
Just
humid
like
up
the
there.
just like the wealthy during the Spanish flu epidemic, went to their sanitariums up in the heights of the Swiss Alps or something, and were taken care of with good fresh air, water, and food, and they all got better.
Yeah, totally. Exactly. We'll rock through these real quick. I don't want to take too long. This takes too long, but so we did the Virgos. The Virgos can suffer food poisoning very easily because the Odes of Horus says like poison loathes the oil. So this is another thing, 12 people at the party ate some bad shrimp or whatever, and I bet your ass it's the Virgos or the ones born 2 signs around who probably got the food poisoning. In fact, Brandon Thomas, he gets really bad poison ivy. Like, what do you call that? What does he have to take?
Like a steroid?
Yeah, like, what do you fuck? I can't. Yeah, I'm having a brain fart. But yeah, he had to take cortisone or cortisol or cortisol is.
Prednisone,
What is it?
prednisone.
Okay, something like yeah. But anyway, so he
I
started
hope
taking
he's
these.
not taking that one.
He took these Virgo salts, and then his poison ivy got it in the garden. Just
I
Nice.
get
gone.
really bad poison oak here, and I always thought it's because of the dry skin, because it just sucks in the oils. Literally, I can be like a foot away and
Yeah,
it'll just suck the oils into my skin because it's the yeah, interesting. Yeah, I mean, I have noticed actually, Steve, since I really started hitting the cell salts in the last 2 years, I haven't had much of poison oak. Interesting.
yeah, it's because of this. This you would be susceptible, and Virgo is the oils too. That's probably why you had dry skin. You don't produce enough oil. Look at the Rolling Stones at 80 whatever years old, like they look like raisins.
Has nothing to do with cocaine. No.
No. Otherwise, I'd look. No, never mind. So here's here's Libra, the 2 scales, which are your kidneys. Funny enough, sometimes the Libra glyph, the scales aren't balanced. They're actually a little out of balance, which your 2 kidneys are too. They're higher and lower. And in the day, the sun is judged at Libra. This would be 6 p.m. or set. So you've got Horus, the sun rising on the horizon. You've got Ra, the sun at noon, Set, the sun at sunset, and then you've got Osiris, which is the moon or the sun in the dark at night. So this isn't just the body. This also happens in the astrology and astronomy as well. But yeah, so the Libras, this is your bladder, kidneys, and your acid neutralizers. So you can see these people have like acid reflux, over acidity, constant cravings. They get upset really quick or unbalanced. They can get rheumatism. They grind their teeth, diphtheria, itching, headache in the forehead, hot flashes, quarrelsome or disagreeable. They can be a little bit, they can be a bit of wankers if they're crabby, scabby ears.
Sucks to be a Libra, right?
No, because they have increased sexual desire. So you want to date one?
Oh, well, there you go.
Except we'll get into that with the Cristos because you can't, you shouldn't be blowing your load like the priests in the seminaries or seminaries. We'll get into that. Rashes, sleeplessness. Yeah. I don't want to dwell. I'll just pull these up. How about for 2 seconds? There's a few left and people can take a screenshot. You can, if you want to talk basics, Bear, about them, if you want to talk about the salts while people look. So you got your calcium salt, that's your Scorpio, procreative organs, your vascular coatings. These would be like if you have an ulcer, probably infertility. And now this is a good one because, there's a lot of people who are having fertility problems these days. Like my ex-wife, man, she had 2 friends that had to go get this, whatever they do at these fertility clinics, and this shit ain't cheap, man. Like it costs like hundreds of thousands of bucks or whatever. So this would be a good salt to start looking at if you're having problems in that. So yeah, pee and blood, swollen gums, pus, gonorrhea, syphilis, cough with sputa. I mean, for me, one of the most liberating things about this and the germ theory debunking is like STDs are BS, which is great. I wish I knew that, in the 80s growing up, we were all scared to death of AIDS.
So
Everyone's
You
got
mean we could have been
AIDS,
even more promiscuous?
Yeah. But think what emotional
There could have been
trauma
a lot
there.
more little Steve Falconers running around.
Yeah, well, I'm just saying, like, we were scared of like a really natural act, right? Like, you're not supposed to be scared of sex. It's like it's natural and sacred, and so yeah. But anyway,
I was scared shitless, Steve. The Magic Johnson thing was a great psyop. Like that hit me over the head because I was a huge Lakers fan. I remember in 8th grade finding out Magic has AIDS. I was like, I'm never having sex again. Like it's like my hero.
Especially not with Magic. I'm not banging that guy, man. No way.
Well, the whole thing too is right. It was just gay men, we're getting AIDS, and all of a sudden you get this stud Magic Johnson, who's like the top of his career. All of a sudden he has AIDS. Like, whoa! And then remember when he tried to come back and play, and he had a cut, and there was this whole like controversy over him bleeding on the court. And man, they did a really good job with that psyop.
The court's got AIDS, yeah, and then he didn't have AIDS all of a sudden. You're like, ain't that a kicker, man?
Yeah, he's totally still
great.
I
think maybe somebody clued him in on the pitfalls of AZT and anti-AIDS medicines. That might be why the guy did so well.
Yeah, I think so too. He probably had, or the whole thing was BS, but yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So Sagittarius is silicea, which is common quartz. This is called your surgeon and your spade. This is also your hips and your insulators. When you look at common quartz under a microscope, ground fine, it has really sharp edges. So this stuff goes around and it's like a surgeon. It actually like chips away at dead fibrin and shit that needs to get out of your body. So that's, it's totally crazy at Liverpool, right? Wilkerson, Stellium 7, you guys had Wilkie on. Did you guys talk about the Titans when he was on?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, like about the
Titan,
Elephant Mountain
and Titan blood.
Yeah. So he was showing me like the caves on that mountain that they live by in Spain. Him and Alex Mike.
The big elephant?
Yeah. He started showing
me
what
the one that was as big as 3 galaxies.
I've been on that mountain. I actually went there to record last year. I'm going there again in December.
Nice.
It's fucking huge, man. You're like, whoa.
And
there's 2 other ones.
Did you go into any of the caves?
We didn't go up, actually. Thank God, because I'm so out of shape, I probably wouldn't have made it. But I don't think my legs would have held out. But what was interesting is he was showing me the anatomy of, different parts of the elephant and what kind of rocks are there. And they match up with the Zodiac wheel. I said, you are shitting me. That's a vein. These salts make up your certain veins and casts. And as he went through the elephant, I just went around this wheel and went, dude, this totally matches up. Like I can tell you that's an artery.
No,
that's skin.
He's got mind-blowing stuff. It's just anybody who hasn't listened to him, fantastic.
Yeah,
And
Wilkie's
he
awesome.
was here on the farm, and we went down to the riverbed, right here, and we found all the, a whole handful of the hearts, and him and I were looking at them together, and I mean, pretty uncanny. I don't know how to explain it any other way.
We found him in a plant at a restaurant in Serbia. Like it was an indoor plant that just had rocks in it. And he's like, look at that. There's a heart right in there. They're just everywhere.
That's
I
hilarious.
to me also, I was talking to Dr. Lydia and De Leon and Arturo De Leon. They're like biogeometry architects and sacred geometry architects. And we were talking about all these Tartarian buildings, with all the antennas and shit. They're built on certain magnetic and diamagnetic mineral deposits and rock deposits or soil that's mixes of both so that the difference creates these fields that they're looking for. Um, and I was thinking they're not really built on ley lines like everyone keeps saying they're all in a straight line. They're actually built on large fallen deposits of these weird minerals. I'm thinking
Wow.
they were building them on Titans. I think that's why there's diamagnetic and magnetic rock differences underneath them because I think they're on Titans. Anyway, here's Capricorn. So yeah, I'll just show the last two because we're probably getting on in time and we want to get to the other stuff. Aquarius is the water bearer, so that's your ankles, saline, and that's your natrium myrrh, again, a fluid compound. So you get tired, hay fever, gonorrhea, asthma, creaky joints, diabetes. People could just have a look at this anyway. And then the last one is Pisces, Jesus, the two fish. Jesus feeds everyone with the two fish. So that's your iron. So this, you can get cancer. It can be an iron, is a ferrum phos deficiency because you get putrefied corpuscles because they're not getting the oxygen and iron together. Depression, crushed, discouraged, insanity, sore pains, stiff back or muscles, hyperamia. I don't know if I misspelled that. Fevers. Yeah, so the iron, like you were saying, Bear, that's the fevers and all that. That's blood rushes to the head, dull throbbing, vomiting, sore throat. Yeah. Anyway, so that's some useful stuff if people recognize those in their signs.
It's kind of cool if you look at the constellations metaphorically, which I believe that's what it's all about, but they're pretty clever. You could take any go silica with Sagittarius, and of course the icon is the archer, and he's got the arrow with the pointed head. But then you look at silica microscopically, and it's got that same shape, and its function, which I think you already mentioned, was to cut these little micro openings through the connective tissue to allow things that don't belong there to escape out of the body. So somebody knew something back there.
Yeah, and also the old name for because he's a half horse, and the old name for a horse was hippo, and that's your hips. Sagittarius is your hips. And he's a half
Yeah,
hippo, like a half horse.
interesting.
It's totally crazy, yeah. So anyway, I don't know if you guys want to kind of move on into like the Cristos. How are we doing time wise? I don't know how long we're knowing us.
Yeah,
We're
I
at
think
2
it's a good.
hours already, or what?
Well, we're an hour and 40 in, so run another 20 minutes maybe. If you're up for it, Steve, I don't know. It's up to you guys.
Yeah, yeah. So like basically, yeah. Unless you want to just do the Christos or Chrism another time or whatever, I could show you these moon signs and stuff though. That's really interesting and
You
just clear
go
that up.
whatever you're in the mood for. Just you're on a roll, so go for it.
All right. Well, okay. Yeah, screw it. Yeah, I can't. All right. Yeah. All right. Let's just get into we'll get into the Christos really quick.
And
Because I mean
you did do a great you had a great interview on what's the gentleman's show where you went really deep into the Christos oil.
Yeah, Brandon Thomas. Yeah. I can't remember the name of the podcast, but everyone's got like truth this. Let's go through it real quick though. We'll just skip all this. We know we're all light. We're all light sound frequencies. We're not meat suits. So we'll just get into this. So this Christos oil. Now here's okay. On the top, let me blow this up. On the top left, this is really important. Let's start with this. When the moon enters your sun sign, your birth sign, this is not sidereal. So this will lead me into what I wanted, the juice I wanted to give you. A psychophysical oil is released from the brain down to the spine to the sacrum bone, which is at your tailbone. That's Sagittarius's too. If you look at the sacral nerves on the back of your ass, they look like a horse tail. That's another one that's like that. Same with Virgo in the solar plexus. If you look at the
Cordis
12
equina,
nerves,
which is Latin for horsetail.
yeah, right. Equina, yeah. And I think that constellation is one of the sub-constellations in there as well. So when the moon enters your sun sign, and I'm going to show you, this is not sidereal. So people are getting this wrong. Um, this psychophysical fluid comes oil, and it's also water down the spine, the sacrum bone. It has to be cared for and not destroyed by acidic foods and liquids, and liquor or sexual energy fluids have to be retained if you want to raise this oil back up to your brain, heaven. And by opening your chakras, which are really like resistors, kind of, aren't they? Sort of, they're like electrical resistors. Um, you have to preserve your sexual energy, maintain the Christ oil. This is your Kundalini rising. This is all this stuff behind the sexual energy, Kundalini, to raise up from the base of the spine to the crown chakra back into the brain. So then what happens is when it comes back up, the several things happen. I think on the way down, it gets electrified by one of the glands and magnetized by the other gland, right? Then it sits down there for 3 days in the tomb. This is your story of Jesus and all that. Um, and then I think it comes up more like a gas bear. Is that your understanding, or is it still
Yes,
fluidic?
absolutely. And the key physiology is the cerebral spinal fluid that runs up and down the spine from the ventricles in the brain. So that's why osteopathy, craniopathy was always like a real important thing in my practice, just to get those bones moving. And if you look at the pituitary gland, which sits more in the fore part of your brain and the pineal behind it, the pituitary sits right on top of a bone, and it's called the sella turcica, another Latin derivative of Western theme, which is the saddle. And the movement, the normal movement of that cranial bone massages the pituitary. And the way you get at that, just right in the temple area, that is a bone that we would manipulate readily in osteopathy often just to get that moving. And it's shaped like a big butterfly, and the pituitary sits right in there. So mechanics of your body, everything all plays into this. And if you're practicing medicine, then it's really handy to, go in there on all cylinders and look at the whole thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And this oil can also be raised through sexual, they call it sex magic, but literally my understanding is your sacrum bone is like a foot pump, like when you get a flat tire, you can either go to the gas station or you can foot pump it. And sex, if you don't blow your load, if you don't finish the deal, that can raise this up too as well if this has happened. I'm just on the left.
Yeah.
So the claustrum is where we get the story of Santa Claus coming down the chimney with the presents. That's because this oil starts in the claustrum. That's where it's produced, and it goes down the pineal and pituitary gland, which are the milk, the land of milk and honey. And the pituitary is the moon, and the pineal is the sun. That's your gold and your silver and your alchemy. So the pineal gland electrically charges the fluid. So that's male or Joseph in the Bible. The pituitary magnetically charges the fluid. So that's what we were saying. Each of these glands makes it electromagnetic. Then the fluid will travel down the two nerves, the Ida and Pingala, connected to the pituitary, and the Pingala, which is connected to the pineal gland. It'll rest for 2 to 3 days on the sacrum bone in the solar plexus. If the oil is saved and not destroyed, it will activate the Kundalini energy, which will turn the oil into a gas and rise up your 33 vertebrae into the medulla oblongata, past to the pineal
That's
gland.
the interesting part you were talking about, is this idea of saving it, right? And specifically relating to your moon cycle. or when your moon is in your sign. I'd love to just go a little deeper into that. And why is it, what's the connection between sort of the generative system and sexuality and this oil? Right. And I think a lot of this has been occulted in mystery schools, and there's a lot of around even like Freemasonry and great Western mystical traditions. And then you have the tantric tradition, right, which talks a lot about this. Why is that? What's the connection there between literally the sexual act of releasing, whether it's the man releasing the sperm or the woman releasing her egg? And they talk about also this idea of the soil and the germ, right? This, like, the woman has the soil and the man has the germ, and this relates to literally like the seed of life and the tree of knowledge and all this stuff. But what is this? Why do you think? What's going on there, guys, with the sex
Well,
juice?
I would, if you want to just borrow from Chinese medicine, we talk about kidney jing, which is like our bank account that we're given when we're born. And very often the kidneys are depleted, and often through sexuality. So, yeah, you just deplete your bank account, and then your energy is lacking. We can talk more about energy in other ways, but that's it. And then, many traditions all say the same thing. For instance, Yaqui man of knowledge, Don Juan Matus in the Carlos Castaneda, novels or accounts with it, however you want to think about them. He talks about if you release your fluids, you lose your glow of awareness. In fact, I was going to get into a little anecdote where that was a little running joke with me and a few people that back in my single days, the other guys also read those books, and you'd come back from getting lucky in a night out, and everybody would shake their head and said, "Oh, you lost your glow of awareness." So anyway, please go on.
Well,
Go ahead,
just
Mike.
curious too, because it's kind of the idea of like maybe that's a sacred act of when you do decide to let your seed out, that's to procreate into a new form of life. And when you're wasting that, which is the God energy, right, that's been bestowed upon us, then you are essentially taking out your ability to ascend back up and to eventually literally ascend your spirit and body out of the realm.
Right. Yeah. And as Perry talks about it in the Zodiac and Salts of Salvation, she said at that time, doctors don't even know what the spleen does. And she said that also plays a part in all this. And that germ can
you don't need that. You can just surgically remove it. No problem.
just take out your funny bone for $500. Remember Operation? So anyway, this is why priests are supposed to be celibate, because they go to seminary school. They're supposed to be celibate because they're supposed to be raising this back up. This seed can be used for regeneration in the male semen, or it can for generation for having children, or it can be risen back up for regeneration of the body, the dormant brain cells. And as we talked about before, when this Cristos opens up the pineal gland with the melatonin, that rejuvenates your red blood cells and counteracts aging, right? Yep. So there's a multifunction. It can open your brain. Now we know this because even in Rocky, Mick won't let him have sex with Adrian. He goes, "Lay off the dames, Rock. Women weaken legs." Right? And
classic.
And it's true. Like, you get tired of, when a man has sex with their wife and stuff, and then as soon as you ejaculate, you're like, you want to go to bed, and she's talking and talking.
Here's
just
a real important point. If you aren't releasing fluids, you got to do something with it, because what you're doing is building up energy in the sacral chakra. So if you just fall short of sealing the deal and then walk away from it, you're going to have some monumental pressure building in that part of your body, and it's going to be hard to. So. When I was in a Kempo club, my first foray into martial arts when I was in my 20s, and I went to this guy in the city. I heard about this old monk dude that just came to our country, and I thought he was going to show me some badass fighting techniques because he was a real fighting monk. And I went into his flat there in San Francisco, and he just sat me down and he taught me the microcosmic orbit. And then from there, opened up the heavenly gates, where it goes through the limbs and everything. But the thing is you learn with meditation how to use your mind to guide that energy, sexual or not, up the key points, up the spine, the governing vessel, then down through the conception vessel, and then taught you how to gather it, in behind the dantian. So, you didn't walk away with blue balls and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And also, you weren't just totally obsessed with sex after that, because you actually, are very satisfied. You run the energy and it feels good. Now, if you're actually fortunate enough to get a partner, a woman who is into the same thing, and then at that magical moment, you exchange each other's energy and take her energy and vice versa and run that up and down your governing and conception vessels. And then that really does an amazing thing for your health and balancing you out. So, but if you bring up these ideas with the average dude, it's like, you'll just get a blank stare. They're going to say, no way.
Yeah.
Because
And when you do the
guys, that's the
cosmic
reason
orbit
for existence, is that one moment.
Yeah, that is the thing. And as I talked with Brandon Thomas about, you don't want to teach this shit to like 6-year-old kids when they're just getting into sexuality and make them afraid of women. This is why Eve's the enemy in the church, the scarlet whore of Babylon, and Eve bit the apple, right? It's all her fault. She made me blow my load. This is where this is all coming from on one of the many
I
allegories.
go along with that, though. I think it's her fault.
Blame it on the women. So here's how you raise the oil: retain your sexual fluids, consume alkaline diet, especially when the moon is in your sign. And we'll get in. How long can we go? Two and a
Bad
half?
news for the carnivores out there.
Yeah. No alcohol. So there goes me. I'm screwed. Kundalini meditation, balance your chakras. When you meditate too, you want to look your eye, even though your eyes are shut, you want to look up and in. You want to try to look cross-eyed and up at your pineal gland. And then you want to keep your tongue on the top of your mouth. Now, I talked to Topher Gardner about this because he learned some kind of, I can't remember what yoga he said. And he said when you put the tongue on the roof of your mouth, it starts creating this spiral vortex through the way you're breathing or whatever. He says creating like chi, light hydrogen, or chi, ether, prana, orgone, whatever you call it. Do you do that in the cosmic orbit, Bear? Do you use
Yeah,
your
all you're doing is
tongue?
completing the circuit, the tongue right behind the hard palate. You make that connection. And when you do this a lot, now after, you feel the energy go through all the points that we are describing. Now, when it gets to your forehead, it's coming down the last leg down a conception vessel, your forehead's going to feel like it's expanding. Then you're going to feel the same thing, the expansion in your fifth center, your thyroid, and through your heart and down through your solar plexus. So you actually feel this happening. But if you don't do the tongue on the palate, it's just going to be less of a connection and more difficult to do. You can still do it.
All right, that's good to know. So that's Psalms 137:6. My tongue cling to the roof of my mouth if I do not remember you, if I do not consider Jerusalem my highest joy. Um, how long do you guys want to go? Like, are we going 2.5? Because
Well, we're coming up on 2. We can kind of start to wrap it up here with this.
Yeah, so I don't think we should get like totally into the Jesus and Mary and all that stuff. I'll just kind of scroll through here.
Well, the moon thing too, right? In terms of the moon in that sign, I think that's really quite fascinating. And
yeah, let's move to that next. I just want to show people real quick this.
Wow, you've done some deep work here.
So yeah, that's what you're talking about. The pituitary is the milk, the moon female magnetic, yep. Pineal is the male electric. So that's in your head, the land of milk and honey. Now, what I'll show you real quick, like I told you guys, they drew all our bodies out into the sky and the stars. And check this out. This is crazy. If I have it, come on.
And I think a lot of this does relate to the law of gender, right? And the polarity of the male female, and we have the alchemical marriage, of course, and everything. But the moon plays that really important part on the feminine side.
Absolutely. Yeah. And as you were talking about, like the moon's light is colder because it's magnetic, it's pulling ground heat away.
Yeah.
Here on the left, you can see if you look at what's called, we call the Milky Way galaxy, whatever the hell that is up there in the firmament, right? It actually starts between Gemini and Cancer, which is where summer starts. That's actually the summer solstice. And then it curves down here to the right between Virgo and Libra. And guess what's sitting right down up there at Cancer? There's a constellation called Messier 44 that's known as the Beehive Cluster, the honey.
Oh, there you go.
And the Milky Way starts
Interesting.
right up here between Gemini and Cancer. So we have the land of milk and honey drawn through the body, right? And it goes right to your Virgo solar plexus and your bowels right up to Cancer, which is your stomach, breast, spleen. So this also ties in as well to the Christos sitting in there. But yeah, so again, so this was I pulled some slides from the girl. This is great. It is in here. Hold on. Shit, date modified. There it is. So again, her channels are Law of the Luminaries on Rumble and what was it? The Keystone on Telegram. So check her out, man. She's cool. So okay.
Yeah, I'm going to.
So here's what's going on. The sun has the analemma, right? I don't know if I have to show it. Your people probably know the analemma. But the sun, every day when the sun's going through the year, it makes like this thing that looks like a bowling pin almost, or like a figure eight with a smaller top and a bigger bottom in the north. What's happening is there's a visual perspective for starters. So if you live on the inside of the flat Earth map on the Tropic of Cancer, obviously in the summer, the sun is closer to you because it's in around you, circling in there. So you see the sun higher in the sky because it's nearer to you. And, when it's winter time and you're on the inside, the sun's all the way far away out on the Tropic of Capricorn. So it looks lower in the sky just because of visual convergence. You know what I mean? The farther, it's like when you look down a street, all the lampposts are 30 feet high, but like a quarter mile down, the lampposts look like they're a foot off the ground. But you could send your wife down there and call her. Then there's also an elevation happening. So every day when the sun is on its way up or down in the analemma, every day the sun either goes up 1 degree or down 1 degree, depending on if it's heading, from summer down into fall and winter or winter up into spring and summer. The moon is on another track, and there's spirals like this. The moon is on a tighter track. Now, in the month, the moon goes up and down this thing, and it moves every day, it moves 13.22 degrees, no matter if it's going up or down. 1 plus 3 is 4. 2 plus 2 is 4, and the sun is 1. That's your 144, your speed of light, 144,000 will be saved, right? That coding is in this wheel. So when you want to find out when is the moon in my sign, you can't go online to like the moon, where is the moon this month? And because that's sidereal. So when we look at, these are also your gates of Enoch, by the way, see at the bottom, gate 1. Then the east gate 4 on the left. Then you got high gate 6 and gate 3, the west. This is the gates the book of Enoch is talking about. So right now the sun is in Sagittarius. So I think it's coming out of Sagittarius. Yeah, it's like we're coming out of Sagittarius almost into we're coming out of Scorpio. Sorry, yeah, we're in Scorpio, but we're almost out. I think the 22nd is the cross. So the sun's like right here. No matter what happens, the full moon, if on this chart here, will always be 90 degrees across from where the sun is. Always. So when you go out in the northern hemisphere, if you're in the southern hemisphere, I don't know, but this is a northern sign. So what's going on is the sun is moving 1 degree a day, right? So again, let's call these music notes. We don't want to call this Sagittarius, Capricorn. Let's think of these as frequencies, energy frequencies. So right now, the sun has been sitting in Scorpio, which is the E energy. I'll show you this on a piano keyboard. So the sun holds this bass chord like an E major all month long. And then the moon is going up this other spiral and down, which is like going up the white notes on a keyboard. I'll show you this, right? So the moon will go 14 days, and then it'll be the half moon or the full moon, right? It'll take 7 to get to half, 14 to get to full, and then it'll start coming down the spiral, and it'll take 7 more to get to waning half. And then here's where they've been lying to us. They tell us the moon cycles start when you see the light. But what we call the no moon, when the moon is black, right? When you don't see the moon, that's part of the cycle. The sun does not have the moon does not have a 28-day monthly cycle. It has a 29 and a half average, but usually 30, just like the sun, except it will always be next to the sun in the sky, so you won't see it because it's black, because they're both dielectric magnets of different kind. They're like negatives of each other, so you can't, they phase each other out. So what's happening is every 2.5 days, right, wherever the sun is, every 2.5 days, wherever the moon is, it's going to go into like what you could call a new frequency, right? So the sun has what we'll call the Scorpio frequency, right? And then the moon every 2.5 days will go into a new frequency up the keyboard. And I'll show you this. So it doesn't matter, like sidereal right now. We don't care what sign is in the sky, for the moon charts. What you care about is that, let's stop calling it Scorpio. Let's call it A, B, C, D, E. Let's call it the music notes, right? A, B, C, D, E, F, G around. So you need to find out when the moon is in full in the sign here, which is a straight across from the fixed, right? And then it has to be your sign, because you're born with these energies. As we said, I don't care if your astrologer friend told you, Bear, that you're not a Leo anymore. Yes, you are. Right. So you need to know every 2.5 days, when the moon is moving from one to the next frequency, where is the real Leo? And that's how you do it. You just have to draw the moon across from wherever the sun is. Now, after the month, like the sun will now start here at Sagittarius, and the moon will lap it and be here at Capricorn almost. So the whole cycle will move one over. Does that make sense? So because the new full moon will have to be across from wherever the sign the sun's in, right? So as the sun is now in the month of what we're calling Sagittarius, the full moon is going to be up here in the Gemini in this wheel. So if you're a Gemini, that's when you take your salt. You have to count the cycles, 2.5 days. So I don't know if I'm explaining that correctly, but we need to start thinking of these things. The sun's going up and closer to you, and the moon is going up and down steeper, 13.22 degrees. So it is actually changing real elevation in the sky, up the toroidal vortex and back down, and getting closer to you. So really, the moon has an analemma. The moon actually has its own analemma that goes up and down. And you start to see it happen. You'll see as the sun starts to as the moon gets closer to the full moon. Now you can see the moon 10 minutes before sunset, and the best time is 6 hours after the alleged moon rise. So you can use a website for moonrise. You'll start to notice as the moon gets full, the sun is way off to the west, or to your right if you're from the northern hemisphere, and the moon will be way high up in the sky. And it will be way left, because they're across from each other. See that? If the sun's in Scorpio, the moon's going to be way high in the sky. And if you take this middle plane across the center, that's like looking up at the sky. So you can draw an imaginary line halfway up the sky, right? And then you can draw one closer down toward the horizon, and you can draw one higher, like Cancer and Tropic of Capricorn, just imaginary in the sky. Well, that will happen. Like the full moon right now, because the sun's in Scorpio down here, the full moon is going to be high, literally high in the sky, up there between Taurus and Gemini. You'll have to look way the hell up in the air. You'll have to bend your neck to see the full moon, right? And as the sun, as this whole thing keeps going round and round and round, the moon will start getting lower at the full moon because it always has to be opposite. So once you
That's
learn this, you
interesting.
can, because people are like, oh, we don't know what's going on with the moon. What the hell's up with the moon? Like it's just random. You're like, no. The reason it's not random, we don't know, is because they lie to us and tell us that those 3 black days of no sun don't count for anything. So we don't know how to count a moon cycle properly.
So
They are,
basically, Steve, what you're
yeah,
saying to compute the days of no ejaculation, let's get to the bare bones here,
yeah,
is, you know, first and foremost, take into consideration what month you're in, so what sign. Then once you know, so if we're in Sag coming up here, we're going to factor in when the full moon is. So then that'll be directly across, and then you will count the days to your sign, basically. So it's about 2.5 days per sign, right?
about 2.5, 2.3. Yeah, exactly.
So then that'll
So-
give you your rough estimate, whether you're going backwards in the month or forwards in the month, depending what your sign is, to get your 2.5 days. So you can mark on your calendar to hold it
yeah.
in.
And
Hold.
she's releasing that too. The girl who I told you to go look at her channel, she releases the chart. She does this for you. She's been mapping them for 2 years. So if you're even too freaking lazy, you can go get her. She tells you where the moon really is every month and what days, right? So like she described it as frequency notes, which is, I'm kicking myself. I never explained this like in music because I'm a music teacher. So it's stupid. But so like the sun, when it's in Aries, that would be like the key of A, right? So you, if you, can you see my cursor okay here? Let me blow this up bigger. Hold on. Can you see my cursor in the A next to the middle C on the left of it?
Yeah.
So that the sun for 1 month, it'll be in Aries, like when it's spring, March 21st. Then this black note, and it'll be playing an A major chord, A, C sharp, and E. Then in the month of Taurus, it'll come up here to B flat. Then in Gemini, it'll be in B for a month, right? It's just for 30 days because we're dividing the circle by 30 days. That's why I'm saying we don't care that the constellations are called that. We know they're long, they're bigger and smaller than 30 degrees of the sky. So let's just call them these energies. So the sun for the whole month will be ringing out this frequency that's resonating with your cell salts through the water in your body. And the moon will be climbing up for 30 days up and down the scale like this. If the moon, so, and it also depends, she'll explain it better. I don't have time to explain it all like this, but on this chart again, okay, so right now the moon, we were in Scorpio and the moon this month was starting in Sagittarius, right? So see how the wheel goes down from Sagittarius? It's going, see how the wheel is falling. If you're going around the zodiac, up, over the top, down, right? And then it climbs again. And this is the sun doing its analemma. Right now, the sun is on its way down the wheel, right? To get, it's going to be lower and lower and lower in the sky in the northern hemisphere until December 21st and 5th. So when the moon's in Sagittarius, it's like you go backwards on the keyboard from left to right. 1, 2, 3. And then when it hits this, it starts climbing. So it goes up. So if you put this, she plays you the music of the spheres, right? But all you need to know is the moon is cycling through 2 octaves. So 16, basically 16 frequencies. Every 2.5 days, the moon is in a new out of 16 frequencies, and the sun is holding the base chord down in 1 frequency only. And these are the different resonances. Now, I bet you the planets are doing this too. The wandering, the wandering stars and planets. But it's the moon that you're concerned about because that's when you need to, that's when your Christos oil or seed germinates.
Yep.
Right.
That's the union going on there. And it's interesting about the moon and the feminine. And like I've talked in the past on Substack, how the moonlight is cooler than the sun. And so this idea of it being magnetically pulling the light out of the soil, out of the actual earth back up. And then that's been sending back to the sun. And so it's this cycle. It's this battery, a dynamo.
I wanted to, because have you done the laser temp test before with the laser temperatures?
I've seen videos of it. Yeah.
Ross and I did it. We have a laser temperature out at the farm. It is true. The moonlight is about a half degree to sometimes almost 1.5 degrees colder than in the moon shade. I guess you could call it, like, if it's black behind a tree, it is colder. I wanted to try it on snow. I've never done it when there's snow, because my theory is that the sun's electric male energy is heating the ground all day, and then the moon's magnetic energy is pulling that ground heat out. Is that what you think's going on too, Mike, or what? And this is like alchemy again, like the ground's the earth storing the sun's energy, and then it returns. But I would like to laser test snow to see if snow, which wouldn't be holding the sun's heat, is still colder in the moon. If the moon snow or whatever instead of the shadow snow, to see if that's
Snow
true.
has a lot of ammonia elements involved in high concentrations because that's a byproduct of the second etheric layer, which is nitrogen, which makes that happen. And everything you've just described, which is brilliant, can also be described and brought down to earth even more if you look at the sun, the solar, and the moon energies in terms of an alchemical perspective, which is the solar energy. That fire element is hydrogen, and then oxygen, which is more the moon yin, and so forth. So when you understand, you can take all the cell salts in the world and you're going to be better off. But if you don't have enough energy, you're dead in the water again. And the interplay between the two polarities that you described, or easier to understand for me when I think of it in hydrogen and oxygen, is exactly what creates energy. And if you look at our realm that has a preponderance of water, which is also duplicated in our bodies, well, energy in the human organism, if it's deficient, again, salt, salts, and everything don't make a difference. I learned this, just in the practice of medicine. First thing I did is I had a way of testing the milliamperage at the cellular level and then ascertaining a lot from that. So the human organism, properly understood, is the free energy mechanism between the interplay of hydrogen and oxygen. And there's one key element that makes that happen. And this is way too much to get into now. And I was telling Mike yesterday that I'm going to do a whole presentation on this, and I'd love to have your input too, if you're available. Hydrogen and oxygen create human photosynthesis. Now, in Darwinian evolutionary theory, of course, we're taught that plants were the first, alive things, and that through the ability to photosynthesize with chlorophyll, then, we have the making of the atmosphere and throwing oxygen out there. Well, that's a very deficient way of creating oxygen or energy. The way the universe works is through melanin. That's what that dark matter in the realm is. That's what melanin does in our body. So here's a difference real quick between melanin and chlorophyll in plant photosynthesis. The chlorophyll will only disassociate hydrogen and oxygen from water in about a 400 to 700 wavelength spectrum. Melanin disassociates water into hydrogen and oxygen and therefore creates energy. That's the way the universe creates energy, including in our own bodies. And if it's not happening, then we're not happening. The melanin operates on a much broader bandwidth of wavelength. And different again than chlorophyll is that after the dissociation to create the energy, it also puts the oxygen and hydrogen back together again. So you have a self-perpetuating energy system. We don't get the bulk of our energy through ATP and all the stuff. That's a crude after effect. So what we have to understand is the role of melanin in the larger realm and within ourselves. And when you look at it from an alchemical perspective of the elements, it makes perfect sense. And where I go with that, it gives a lot of practical value to things you can actually do in farming, in medicine, and so forth. And also, at the start of any endeavor, you have to make sure that that interaction is happening. So people came first, not plants. And we were the original energy machines, and it was from that. And then hemoglobin, with the iron element, is kind of the analogous chemical substance as chlorophyll, and it's kind of a crude carrier also compared to that original alchemical marriage between male and female, which is hydrogen and oxygen. We'll do a whole presentation on that and also make an excellent case on why people don't even need food. Don't try to take it away from me yet because I'm not ready. But the evidence is all there. And, I talk a lot about different tests that show a line of electrical resistance in a body. And that tells you, where you're at as far as the ability to just be in a perpetual energy deriving state or in a state of net energy loss, which means it's the beginning of the end and you go through the whole aging thing and everything. But if we had more time to talk about it, we could really kind of integrate it with that excellent model that you just put out there with looking at the larger bodies that are floating around above our heads or whatever the heck those things are.
Yeah, that's totally fascinating. I mean, she's got a theory. They're just magnets. They're giant toroidal fields with a dielectric plane of inertia. And the sun, she's saying this, it's, when you look at a ferrocell from the top, you see the black hole where the magnetic, what they would call 0 point, but where the movement's coming from the state of inertia or the state of its natural rest. She's saying it's almost like we're looking through. If you, like for sun gazers, if you shut one eye and then blink the other eye while you're sun gazing, you can see the black hole in the middle of the sun with a red and blue ring around it. You'll start to see it after a while. So her idea is that somehow what the moon is looking like a photo, they're both magnets, but the one is like for some reason looking like a photo negative. So we're seeing the white part of it coming around, right? And when the sun, we're actually looking straight down the hole. And she thinks the stars could be lesser magnets. I don't know. I have no freaking clue what any of them are. All I know is they do affect us. You can go into the emergency room or the police station on a full moon and it's going crazy. They know that, right?
I used to work in emergency medicine, and on full moon shifts, I used to absolutely dread them because you knew you'd be up all night taking care of crazies.
Lunatic.
Yeah, totally. It's because Sanos Bonacci said, I don't know this. He said that when the moons are in your sign for real, like we just showed, and by the way, that's what I'm saying. There's not 13 constellations. Screw Ophiuchus, and we know it's up there. Every Capricorn has Dolphinus. It has like 3 constellations in the one thing. So now I showed you the moon is still going around the same 12 as the sun. It's just moving quicker and going higher and down. But he was saying like, if the moon was in because it's magnetic and your blood's got iron in it, he was saying like if you need a brain surgery, which you shouldn't hopefully ever, you don't want to go in there when the moon is in Aries because you'll bleed out. He's saying that surgeons will actually have times of the month where people are bleeding out. If you had a heart surgery, you wouldn't want to go when the moon's in Leo because it's resonating. See with those salts. See what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I don't know if it's true. I'd love to talk to surgeons and say like, hey, wouldn't it be cool to ask some surgeons, say, hey, what time do you have a weird time of month where you got like a shitload of you're losing people all the time on the table and then match it up to her signs and see if wouldn't that be cool? Just to see if it matches.
Well, I think and that's related to also there's lots of different things around agriculture to where the moon is and the time because all the plants have the seeds have the salts and everything. So yeah, unlocking some serious mysteries here. I love it, Steve. Well, hey guys, this has been a phenomenal chat. We got to have a round 2, oil part 2, Christos Oil part 2 for sure.
Yeah, it's not enough time, dude, to go like that's a 2-hour talk, the Cristos, but it's really a lot to unpack. But yeah, thank you for having me on. It's been great. I love talking to you guys, and I learn a lot. So I'd love to come back again.
Yeah, that was a great presentation. So thank you so much for that. And yeah, let's do number 4 sometime, maybe after the first of the year, and we can get into all sorts of good stuff.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. I'm actually going to Spain to record with Alex Michael, conspiracy music guru. So we're going to be making a couple new original songs, and I'll see Wilkerson too. Maybe I'll get my fat
Oh,
ass up that
nice.
big elephant mountain. But yeah, so this is my last podcast of the year.
That's
I
great.
I promise again. So to everybody who I haven't seen or whatever, and you guys, we'll talk after we shut it off. But Merry Christmas and Happy Solstice and holidays to you and everyone else too.
Yes, very
And
much.
back to you as well.
Thanks everybody for joining us today. The chat was on fire. Remember to get outside, get your feet dirty, go ground, go plant something, go show Mother Nature some love. She'll show it right back. We'll see you next week. Oh, actually, we're taking Thanksgiving off. So no show next Thursday. Did you know that, Bear? We're taking Thanksgiving off to
I do
enjoy
now.
We'll be trying to get the
I
boys
never shy away from a day off
Right?
of anything.
the very few and far between, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, anyways, guys, enjoy your Thanksgiving. Much gratitude to y'all. We love you so much. When we'll see you in 2 weeks. Peace.